course, the first trouble we had, or the first church we started building, it was during the war. The war was still going on in 1945, and the lumber was hard to get, and the hardware was hard to get, everything was hard to get. We scrounged around everywhere trying to get enough lumber and doorknobs and hinges and things like that to get the building put together. But we finally got into the basement at the end of 45, and then in 46 the war was over and things began to loosen up a little bit. And we were able to get the materials to go ahead and finish the upper structure of the building. We got ready to build the mission up on the Government Hill, which is now Calvary Baptist Church. We had some problems with that. Like I said before, this was government property. It was in the railroad reserve, and the railroad was controlled, or it belonged to the Department of Interior of the United States. They had built it and they operated it. And the Federal Council of Churches had had an agreement, as I explained before, that Alaska would be divided between the various denominations on mission work. When we leased the land from the Department of Interior, which is up on Government Hill where Calvary Baptist Church now sits, the missions committee of the Federal Council of Churches protested. First of all, they came up here and protested to the general manager of the railroad, because he is the one who had handled the leasing. And they asked him to break the lease because we Baptists had no business in this part of Alaska anyhow. But I had helped him in a labor dispute he had down there, acting as mediator, and helped him settle it. And there was a man from the Department of Interior up here sitting in on those sessions where we settled this labor dispute. And he called me in, that is, the general manager of the railroad called me in and told me that the committee had been to see him and what they wanted to do, and he told them he couldn't break that lease. And they said that they would go to the Department of Interior in Washington, D.C. and try to break that lease. Us Baptists just didn't belong in Alaska, somewhere else. So the general manager of the Alaska Railroad called me in, and I went in to see him, and he told me what had happened. And he called this labor man from the Department of Interior in Washington, D.C. and told him what had happened, and said this committee from the Federal Council of Churches, Missions Committee, was coming to Washington, D.C. to try to get the Department of Interior to break that lease which we had on that land up on Government Hill. And the man in Washington, D.C. said, "Don't worry about it, I'll handle it." And that's the last that we heard about the efforts of the Federal Council to break the lease at Calvary Baptist Church. Had another little problem. We were going to move a building out in the south part of town, way down south, in a place called Sunset Hills. It was a division called Sunset Hills. And we had bought some land out there and was going to build a mission. And there was an old building. Well, it had been used to start our native mission, and then it was moved out to start Muldoon Baptist Church. And then when they put up a building, we were going to move it out into Sunset Hills and start a mission out there. There was a lady out there didn't want a church in her community. She went around and got people to sign petitions asking us not to put any kind of a church or building out there on that property. Her husband came in to see me. I felt kind of sorry for him. I think he was a Mr. Milquetoast and she run the show. But he brought that petition and laid it on my desk and said, I want you to read that. And I looked at it and I laughed a little bit and I said, you know, the names on a piece of paper don't intimidate me very much. I've had a guy come in here with a pistol in his hand trying to intimidate me. And a paper don't mean a thing. Now sit down and let me tell you what we want to do. And I talked to him for about 30 minutes, telling him what our plans were, what we wanted to do. I said, all we want to do is good. We're trying to help people. We're trying to make them happier. We're trying to win them to Christ. We're trying to make Christians out of them. It'll make your neighborhood better. Christians don't go around stealing and robbing and raping and getting cars and stripping them. They just don't do that. And the more Christians you have in your community, the better community you're going to have. Before he left, after I talked to him, the man gave me a check for $100, says, I want to help you on the mission. Now, that was a switch. I don't know how he explained that to his wife when he got home. But anyway, we had some difficulty there, or tried to, and make some difficulty. Now we have a nice church out, Sunset Hills Baptist Church, which has been in operation for years, and it's doing real good. And folks are saved, and lives are changed, and it's a better community because Sunset Hills Baptist Church is out there.